so it's not actually properly assessed for value.
So the tax map on the website is incorrect?
The map is correct.
The number on the map?
The
Assessment.
value, the assessed value on that, that PRC is incorrect. It probably wouldn't be correct if it was being assessed as a taxable property.
Thank you.
That's a good question. We thought the same, but you know, rather than trying to go back and forth with the owners of the property, they bought the land unknowingly, you know, not knowing that this was an issue, and right?
Well, to explain what happened,
Yeah,
there's a little bit of history here. The original home that was on the adjacent property burned down in 2002 and was rebuilt. When the home was rebuilt, it was built closer to the property line, so it's actually encroaching on the piece of town-owned land, unknowingly at the time. Over the years, subsequent property owners have actually made the encroachment worse by extending the driveway so that it actually comes right into the buffer between the two properties. And then the most recent previous property owner actually extended the backyard across well into town-owned property and built a shed there. When the current homeowners bought it, they thought that was part of the parcel that they were buying. They were unaware of the actual bounds of the property that they were purchasing. And I'm not entirely sure how that happened. So when they learned after the fact that they had bought a parcel that did not include a fair chunk of what they assumed to be their backyard and that shed, they then approached the town and said, we'd like to buy it. So this resolves those issues. It takes this off of the town's non-taxable properties. There really isn't a whole lot of downside to it. It makes it a taxable property again, and it gives that, it will help to bring that home into compliance, fully into compliance with zoning.
Is this a log cabin kind of type house?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay.
and certainly when that parcel gets added to their parcel, that additional assessment won't go up 54,000.
Of course.
Whatever was the
Right.
placeholder.
Right.
It'll go up, you know.
Relative to its actual value, yeah.
The front 3/4 of it is soaking wet, so you can't, without encroaching on the two neighboring properties, you can't even get to the part that's halfway decent.
So, but it was a tax deeded property?
Yes, in 93 or 4. I don't
So the
remember.
town knew what the property line was, it's whoever bought it at that tax deed.
Well, so it was a tax deeded property, meaning that the previous owner didn't pay their taxes for at least 3 years. And after that time, the tax collector and the select board executed the tax deed, took possession of the property. There was an attempt to sell it to the other abutting property owner at one time. For whatever reason, that did not go through. So it's just sat there. Honestly, I had no idea that we even owned a parcel out on Greenfield Road. It's so tiny, it's not something that the Conservation Commission's that interested in or anything like that. So it's just sat out there for all of these years without being monitored for any kind of encroachment. And it wasn't until we learned about it, the sale and the oddities of that sale.
It's certainly an anomaly, isn't it?
It really is, yeah, and I feel very bad for the people who bought that home unknowingly.
Isn't that the real estate agent's job?
Yeah, it is.
Great
What
question,
was
thanks. Anyone else? No? Is it fair to say we can make a motion as,
Not yet. So,
one more?
4114 is an odd little RSA. So it requires the selectmen to hold 2 public hearings, and then no less than 7 days, no more than 10 days after the second public hearing, then the selectmen may vote on whether or not to sell the property. So, yes, you will have a meeting next week to have one more vote on this. Which is just,
Yeah.
I won't be there either. It's
So we
Tuesday.
can have a review.
Seriously, we should, yeah, I'll be out of town, leaving town Tuesday.
okay, well, that's going to
It'll be after that. This doesn't really seem like a thing that we need to have a whole entire special meeting about.
then we're gonna have to, I'll have to investigate how we remedy that.
So it has to be in that 7 to 10 day window?
Has to be within that window,
Oh, brother.
yeah.
Well, I'll be gone from 7 to 10 days from now, so.
I'll be gone from Monday through Saturday, so
Okay.
Same.
can we do it on Zoom or something?
No.
No, it's got to be in person.
It's gotta be in person.
I'll be here, can I just unilaterally take over the board?
I'm down with that.
I thought you'd already done that.
Enjoy, because there's all kinds of decisions I'll
It's a
make.
very interesting.
Let me figure out what the next steps will be, because we're still waiting for the Conservation Commission to submit their
Oh.
recommendations. They're
Maybe
meeting on
7
Thursday.
to 10 days from them
No,
submitting?
From tonight.
Well, is it 7 to 10 business days?
That's a good question. As I said, I'm going to investigate all of that and
Yeah.
figure out
If it's
what
7 to 10
exactly,
business days, then we're okay. because
what
that's-
exactly we do in terms of holiday
I don't think anyone should
scheduling.
take it enforcement.
What if we continued this public hearing and not closed it until
December?
Friday? What day is this, Tuesday?
Today's
Yeah, what if
Tuesday.
we ran the clock on this public hearing we're opening, we're in right now without voting to close it?
It won't matter. Let me go back and review the actual RSA and see if I can figure out a solution that works for everyone. And if you could guys could all send me your schedules for the next week or so, that'd be great.
I'm gone. That's it.
You're
That's my
just gone,
subject.
yeah.
That's it. Okay, so we don't have to close the public hearing right now?
You can close the public hearing, you cannot close it, it's entirely up to you.
Anybody else think of any other questions while we're discussing all that? All right,
It's a burning issue.
I'd make a motion that we close this public hearing and move forward with whatever means necessary to sell this property.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that information. Okay, up now, progress on the Superfund site down over at South Municipal Water Wells Supply. Joining us are Chris Rawnsley from New Hampshire Ball Bearings, Valerie Jurgens and Ashley Brooks from the US EPA, Stephanie Monet, New Hampshire DES, and Rhiannon Scott and Carl Elder from Geosyntec. Are you all here? Okay, great. So as you speak, or welcome all of you, just state your name.
Okay. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chris Rawnsley from New Hampshire Ball Bearings. I know I've been coming down to give these presentations, I think, since the late 80s. I don't think everybody's heard them, though. But thank you for introducing the team here. Part of the Superfund process is to update the public and the town as an important stakeholder in this process periodically as we come to milestones or action plans. So it's probably been 4 or 5 years since we've been down to update you. We thought, given where we are in the project, it would be appropriate to do that now. I'm going to let the technical staff do most of the talking, but just really quickly, for those of you who aren't familiar, the town's South Municipal well was shut off in the early 80s due to contamination that was ultimately found to come from New Hampshire Ball Bearings. And since that time, New Hampshire Ball Bearings has been working with the oversight of US EPA and the state of New Hampshire to try to remedy the situation. We've done a substantial amount of work over the years. The initial actions that we're taking were as a pump and treat system that pumped many billions of gallons of water, and in 2005 it was thought by all the stakeholders that maybe that had remedied the problem. And we performed a long-term pump test at the south well and discovered that it hadn't remedied the problem. And we went back to the drawing board, and EPA came up with an amendment to its records of decision on what we're going to do in 2010, and since then we've been implementing those actions, including the installation of a reactive wall along our property boundary and a large thermal treatment system under the plant. We're here now because the reactive barrier that was installed in 2016 has not met its performance goals. And we're designing a new one, and we'll be installing it hopefully starting next spring, and that's what we wanted to update you on, is what that's going to look like and what we'll be doing there, and answer any questions you have. With that, I'll turn it over to the Geosyntec folks, and they can speak to the technical details.
Great, thank you.
And come up here so I can point a few things out. I'm Rhiannon Scott. I'm with Geosyntec, and if you don't mind advancing the slide for me, that would be great. So as Chris said, we want to talk about the construction of the permeable reactive barrier that's going to be coming up next year, see if there's any questions or concerns. It's a quick presentation. Chris already talked a little bit about the site background. I'm going to give you an overview of the PRB technology that's going to be constructed, and then talk about the kind of the logistics, which I think might be of most interest here, and then the initial schedule that we have planned at the moment. You're already on it. So here's a kind of a site map. We're looking at Route 202s right here with the plant entrance right here and the New Hampshire ball bearing facility over here. Along the side here, I have kind of listed out some of the history that Chris just went through, but the groundwater flows from the facility this way off the property. And along, right here, there's an old railroad bed, which is where the previous PRB was installed that hasn't met its remedial objectives and is the same location where we're gonna be doing the construction to install the new one next year. This area is all wetland, so this is really the only viable location for it, and is also what's called out in the EPA record of decision. Next slide, please. So what is a PRB? It's basically a wall that's going to be installed underground, but it's made up of permeable media so that groundwater can flow through. But it is reactive with the contaminants so that as groundwater that's contaminated flows through, it reacts and turns into non-harmful byproducts, and clean groundwater comes out the other side. So they're just kind of little conceptual cartoons with a plan view and a profile view over here. On the profile view, you can helps visualize the wall will go from the top of the water table, which is what this line here is, down to bedrock. And it really will be like a wall that the water is flowing through and coming out clean on the other side. For this particular PRB, we're going to be using zero valent iron for the construction, which is basically just iron filings. I have a little jar if anyone's interested in looking at it, but
We used to play with these
Yeah, you know.
with magnets, right?
yeah, so it's just iron that's broken down
Don't
into
even-
smaller
When you
sections.
weren't playing with mercury.
Or lead paint chips.
And so kind of logistically here, we have the same site map. The alignment of the PRB is along here again. It's going to be 450 feet long, and it'll be down to 50 or 60 feet in depth. So it's a good size, it'll be a good size construction project. The way that it's going to be installed is we'll be using a large diameter drill rig that will be putting in metal casings. So these 3-foot diameter, you can think of it as a hollow cylinder that'll be pushed down into the ground all the way down to bedrock. And the soil inside that will then be removed and replaced with iron mixed with sand. And then these will just be lined up next to each other down the alignment to create that 450-foot PRB. All of the construction will be on the New Hampshire ball bearing property, so there won't be any construction in the road or in the DOT right away between the road and the property. There's also the laydown and material storage area is also on the New Hampshire ball bearing property. I think the thing that might be noticed most by the public is a little bit of increased traffic for the deliveries of material coming in. There'll be some soil hauled off-site, but I don't think that'll be particularly significant except for the days when the contractor is mobilizing all of their equipment and then demobilizing and coming back out of the project. Next slide. These are just kind of what I thought might be most important. People driving by on Route 202, what are they going to see while the construction's going on? That's a picture over here is the drill rig or something similar to that that'll be used to install the PRB. And then other than that, it's pretty common construction equipment, dump trucks hauling soil back and forth across the site. And they'll be mixing vehicles like that, or maybe more like a cement truck that you're used to seeing that'll be mixing the backfill of the iron and sand. Yep.
The big tubes that are pounded into the ground are solid? Are they perforated? They must be perforated for the water to get in one side and out the other? How are they? And also containing this stuff?
So they take them back up.
Yeah, so they're solid and they'll hammer it in all the way,
Comes
and then
out.
it'll come back out as they're backfilling it. Yep.
So we just had a huge construction process right downtown, where we rebuilt the bridge, and there was a lot of hammering things down to bedrock, so we're quite used to that process.
The rig that will be doing this work will be essentially the same one that,
Are you gonna drop it into the river?
no, we're not going to drop it in the river.
But same
Mr.
construction
Kennedy. But it's the same thing. It won't be pounding. These are rotary.
Oh, these are rotary grinders?
I'm not misspeaking there, am I, Rhiannon?
There is a certain
There's-
amount of.
It may be a
There might be
combination,
both.
that's what they encounter. I think there's gonna be some pounding as they rotate it, but to get it in.
It's not particularly close to any residential areas though, so.
Right, that's true.
The former Strang residence is the closest, and it's currently empty.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody on Old Jaffrey Road will be affected by vibrations. I think, as Rhiannon said, the most noticeable thing is going to be, there's going to be a construction project right along the road. I think most people are used to seeing the line of trees between the plant and the road. All those trees are going to be cut down. So this will be quite obvious to people, and questions may be addressed to you guys as to what's going on. So hopefully we give you enough information.
We'll just run them through the PowerPoint.
Yep.
A quick
Or have them call.
technical question.
Yes.
The iron filings, are they acting as a catalyst to destroy the contaminants, or are they just simply trapping the contaminants?
It's actually a chemical reaction that destroys it.
Okay.
Creates a redox
Right.
situation.
Exchanges electrons and it reduces the contaminants.
What was the material used in this previous attempt that failed?
So the previous attempt was also iron, but they had a different installation method, which is where the problem ended up lying. So then instead of kind of placing it into the ground like we're going to, they injected it with a drill rig under high pressure in a liquid solution, which does work in some type of geologies, but it's harder to control where the iron's being placed.
Sorry, remind me when that happened and how long it took to realize it had failed.
That was in 2014, was the construction season. And I think it's fair to say that New Hampshire Ball Bearings, the state and EPA were asking questions as to what was going on in terms of performance by 2017, 2018. It's not something where it's immediately obvious that it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. In me asking Geosyntec the same question about this, when are we going to know if it's working or not, Carl has told me it's going to take 2 years, basically, to know.
And so we'll still be drawing water from the south production well to test? Is that where the test wells are?
Actually, no, we don't have it on here, but we have a series of wells that are going to be on one side of it.
Okay.
Some wells within the wall itself, and some wells down gradient, almost right within the railroad bed, so we don't have to wait for it to even get to
Okay.
the
Which
water
is-
to get to 202.
Yeah.
The reason it's going to take a little bit of time is from the very edge of the wall we put in
Mm.
to our wells, let's say they're 10 feet away, all that soil in between has come into equilibrium with the contaminated groundwater.
Mhm.
And we might have clean water leave the wall, but it's going to be in contact with all that soil.
Yeah.
And it's going to, the contaminants are going to come off the soil into the water. So there's going to be a period where it has to wash through that. And so it may be, we may have clean water coming out of the wall very quickly, but we may not see it at the wells. You say 10 or 15 feet down gradient until there's a little bit of time for things to come back into equilibrium.
How long do you expect it will take before you get some true readings?
And we should start to see progress being made fairly quickly. We're going to see the concentrations probably going down, and there's different redox parameters we're going to see.
Mhm.
Sorry, dissolved oxygen and chemical parameters for the water that we should see fairly soon in the first year. But there's going to be, just remember, there's this kind of equilibrium period because we're putting this big feature in. It's going to change what has been going on for 40 years. And, you turn the air conditioner on in your house, the room doesn't cool down in, the first 5 minutes. It takes a little while for it to re-equilibrate to that air conditioner.
That makes sense.
Was this technology available back in 2014 when the other was attempted?
The technology was zero valent iron. The use of zero valent iron for remediation has been around for about 20, 25 years. Again, it's the installation method that we think that the flow occurred in. And yes, you could drill like this. This is a much more expensive approach. But given the site history, New Hampshire ball bearing is going with a method that has more certainty with the placement of the iron at a significant cost.
Is this will be the third attempt at correcting this issue? Or more?
This is the second attempt at installation of a PRB, but a lot of different remedial technologies have been applied to different media: groundwater, soil, wetland sediments, soil vapor. So we've sucked air out of the ground, we've pumped groundwater out of the ground, we've heated the ground up to 220 degrees, we've installed PRBs, we've dug up the wetlands. So, all in all,
What's the third option?
the third?
No, this is a second attempt at this.
Yes.
So if this fails, what's the third?
I don't know that we have considered that yet.
You need to stay.
Doug Ward.
Thanks. Carol, do you have a question too?
I do, but
Oh, Lily.
Lily's
I'm
had
sorry.
it.
Can I ask where you're taking the contaminated soil to? Another part of town, or?
It's gonna stay on site.
Some of it will be mixed in with the PRB and put back down where it came from, and then the rest of it will go to permitted facilities that it can accept the waste. We haven't selected the specific facilities yet, but they all have to be approved by EPA before the soil can be sent there. Landfills, yeah, sorry.
Carol?
Well, unless you're finished with your presentation, I do.
The last thing I had was a schedule, but.
Perfect, that's what I was going to
Okay.
ask.
So this is a schedule kind of as we're thinking of now. It's contingent upon contractor availability and EPA approval of the final design. The plan is for the request for proposals to go out fairly soon and to select a contractor in February timeframe, submit our final design report to EPA in the early spring with the hope that the contractor can start mobilizing early summer, June timeframe. And at the moment, we think construction will take about 6 months in total, including site preparation and installation.
Anything else?
When would the trees come down first and then you would bring the equipment in and do all of that?
Yeah, the trees coming down would be kind of part of mobilizing everything to the site.
And will once you're done, is there a plan to reintroduce vegetation?
Yes, as part of the requirements for being right next to the wetland there, vegetation, appropriate types of vegetation have to be replanted once the project's complete.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Doug, anything else?
No.
Well, great. Thank you for the update, progress. It's good to see you're still pecking at this.
Well, I hesitate to call it pecking at it, and I would be much happier to come down and tell you we finished it and it's clean, but this is where we are. I would say that if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. If you have questions of, the oversight people, EPA and the state are in charge of what we do here in terms of ensuring that we perform the way we're supposed to. They're happy to field questions. So please communicate. The town and the public are significant stakeholders in this, and we want to make sure everybody stands what we're doing.
Just to introduce ourselves, I'm Valerie Jurgens. I'm the project manager with EPA. So I'm the best point of contact for the EPA for this project.
And I'm Stephanie Monet, and I'm the DES's project manager for this, so if you have any state-type questions. EPA is the lead agency, but the state supports EPA, but we also can answer any state rule or permitting type questions that anyone may have.
Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry to hear that still has to go on. It
Yeah.
sounds expensive.
It is, but, you know, we're committed to seeing it through, so.
Good. All right, up next,
Tax rate,
tax rate setting.
tax rate setting.
Edge of your seats,
Very exciting.
Chris, I'm Lily Gilligan, I'm the finance director there.
Okay. Not torture at all.
Okay, I'm not sure.
Want to try my course?
I don't know.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Sure.
Awesome, thank you very much.
The same thing. Just in case anyone has questions about the state.
For the record, Lily Gilligan, our finance director, is also here to discuss this with us.
All right, so what we have up here on the screen is the draft. What I hope is the final draft and will be the final of the tax rate calculation. As you recall, when we spoke about this, the selectmen wanted to keep it as close to flat as possible. We used just over $1 million of fund balance to get it flat. Lily does not believe, and of course Lily will jump in if I'm wrong, but does not believe that using that $1 million of fund balance will in any way jeopardize the town's cash flow position. So it's certainly something that we'll be able to do. The school district also used fund balance to reduce their portion of the tax rate as well this year.
Well, to reduce it, but it is still a 55-cent increase.
Increase over the prior year. Yeah, so that is the significant driver of this tax rate. The municipal portion of the tax rate only went up 10 cents.
This is the entire portion is 10 cents because the
entire
state's
10
portion came down
Right.
45 cents.
Thank you.
And the county is flat at 97 cents.
Yeah. So yeah, we're looking at the thing entirely. This is just that first page, the summary. You'll see that the proposed tax rate is $25.86. So what we're really looking for from the select board is a vote to utilize fund balance to set the tax rate. Sorry.
$1,055,000.
Thank you. You found it before I did.
So moved.
What was our previous tax rate?
2571.
2571. You think I'm ready to think about this?
Your previous tax rate, you're talking about last year's?
Yeah.
25.76.
Yeah.
10 cents, yeah.
Well, yeah, 10 cents, okay, 20%.
Okay, so let's say I have a $200,000 house.
Or like 350.
And 10 cents per thousand.
Yep.
We have a calculator. What's that, $200 increase?
About that.
All right, you moved it.
I did.
Any questions? Doug, Carol?
Just, I'm sorry, I was trying to look up what the tax rate was when you were talking. So you're taking $1 million from the, what?
$1,055,000 from fund balance.
What's in there now?
3 million.
I think it's that last page.
Just under 3 million.
Go to the last page, it shows you how much is in fund balance.
So it'll show you what's left.
And anybody that's tuning in via one of the other avenues, Comcast 22, maybe they're watching?
Maybe it'd be
Maybe it's the first time they're watching.
plus
Fund balance is created
1,900,000.
through
What are you looking at?
money that
The 1,055,000 right there.
not used.
That's what we're proposing to
Yeah.
use.
Of our
But the amount
expenses,
that's
but has been collected through taxes.
total is the 1
Based on
million
the budgets that we
plus
set. And
The
then,
retain, we're
several-
retaining 1,943,000.
In several instances, we have extra
So
revenue.
we have
that
$3
comes
million
in
in funds.
Before we get
Anticipated
unanticipated
I'm
revenue.
rounding.
So that ends up, the money that we don't end up spending on the budget ends up going into the fund balance, which allows us to then use taxpayers' own money to reimburse them in the case like this where we use $1,055,000 of that, which is accrued over time.
Yep, exactly.
And the reason for the fund balance, we have to keep, just so anybody hasn't learned yet, we need to keep between, what was it, is it 8% and 15%?
5.
5 and
17.
And that's safe and
You actually don't have to.
Yeah, it's a
recommended.
recommended.
You can
for-
retain 0, but for cash flow purposes, we always have about $750,000 owed in taxes that are being paid late.
Right. And also credit, veterans credits and those sort of, right?
Those
That's in
affect
that
your tax rate.
calculation. That affects it. So the more you give in credits, the more, the tax rate has to go up to reflect that.
Right, and also for further note, this is based on a preliminary budget that has not been finished yet.
No,
No.
well, this is our
This is
current year
current
budget.
year.
Right.
Current year budget. So this is what was voted on in May.
Right.
And passed by, all the voters that came to town meeting.
Do this again next year.
And
The increase from the school was 55 cents a thousand,
Yes.
which we paid down. So,
right, all right, so we had a motion, and I'll certainly second using $1,055,000 of that fund balance to lower that tax rate down to 2586. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hey, great work, thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go notify the
Go click your
DRA. Bills hopefully will be on by Friday. Thank you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes.
We couldn't have delayed
yeah.
that.
Hopefully, we're all dying to see that in the mailbox.
Well, the motion was to allocate the fund balance. Monies, right? Okay.
Yeah, we're required to set the tax rate,
Right.
whether or not you choose to use fund balance to reduce it.
Okay,
All right, so next piece is to vote minutes. I also have a little bit of other business that I'd like to get done tonight.
all right, well, I would make a motion that we approve the minutes from October 18th, November 1st, and November 3rd. That was the select board retreat.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great.
As the board may recall, we were working with the prior owners of the property, the tax deeded property on Summer Street. They have approached us to repurchase it. What I have here is a release, a deed that will move it back from the town to the former property owners. They said they will come with a bank check tomorrow morning for the full amount, plus fees and interest and every other thing that got tacked on there. At that point, we will then record this deed, but not before we get that check from them.
Should we sign it before we get a check?
Yes, because I want to get this done, if possible, this week. Every day that it's outstanding, the amount that they owe changes. So it's,
Gotcha.
it's
Gotcha.
just easier this way.
Good.
And get that done.
Do we need a motion, anything on that?
Yeah, if you could move to accept the repurchase.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So there's that.
Great.
So apparently they've cleaned up the communication lines.
Yes. Yes, all that's been cleaned up.
Tragic circumstance. Apparently been ameliorated, so good.
And other than that, the only other action you have tonight is a non-public session.
All right. Seems like done signing this, we'll do that.
I like it. I like this.
Really nice closing.
One more.
We lost our audience.
We're gonna have to throw them out anyways.
Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to do to your office.
Of course.
You have more comfortable chairs than.
Maybe that will work. Maybe that will work.
Nobody is gonna ask. But what motion to move to a non-public session?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we'll call a vote.